Hi there, I'm Philip Heidson, the founder of Art of Procurement. And at Art of Procurement, we help procurement professionals like you plan and deliver change with confidence. Whether it's through the mapping and prioritization of your change journey, securing the subject matter expertise that you need to help you along the way, or assisting you and your team to take action on what they learn, and what's really important is on also what they already know. And of course, a big part of what we do is this weekly podcast where we share strategies and tactics that aim to inspire and help elevate your change journey. I want to thank you for joining me today. Let's go straight into the show. Hey there, I hope you had a wonderful holiday break and you're raring to go here in 2019. Welcome to today's episode. Thank you so much, as ever, for tuning in. We're at number 234, so it's our first episode of the new year. And before I go into today's interview, I wanted to quickly let you know what my team and I were up to over the break. So in short, we have consolidated all of our brands, Palanbridge and Catalysco, into Art of Procurement. And to go with it, we've launched a new website. That's at artofprocurement.com. That's the usual address. But it just brings together everything that my team and I work on together. It's something that we're really excited about. I've written about why you should check out the blog, but I'm going to leave some of the discussion as to why we've done that, what we have learned, for another day. And that's because I want to go straight into today's interview, and I'm joined today by a returning guest, Charlotte de Brabandt, ISM's 2018 30 Under 30 winner, and Yannick Blattler, the Managing Director of NeoViso, a consulting firm that helps companies more effectively engage with Generation Z or Generation Z, depending on where in the world you are. And so in our conversation, we discuss how procurement leaders can create the environment necessary to maximize the potential of their millennial employees, but also lay the groundwork for Gen Z. And while Charlotte is well known to Art of Procurement listeners, I started then by asking Yannick if he could share how he became involved in Gen Z engagement.
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, I'm still studying in Switzerland. I studied first in Zurich and now in St. Gallen in business. And we invited companies to the university talking about future topics. And for them, it was always interesting to share what those companies are up to, what they're thinking about the future, where it is going, and at the same time, share their employer brand, what they're doing to students. And as an organizer, I found out that a lot of companies, they had sometimes no idea how to target students, what they are interested in. So I started doing my own keynotes to those companies, like basically doing consulting for all those companies about how to reach young people, us millennials or Gen Z. And yeah, that's when I started 2 years ago, my company, NeoViso, and I'm basically doing consulting, research, media productions for companies, all about the topic around the young people of today. In general, the young people are your employees of the future. They are your customers of the future. They are your business partner of the future. And it was very surprising for me that companies had so much like a noisy understanding of us young people. They had no idea sometimes about what we want, how we behave, what our mindset is. And I figured out after doing some keynotes that if like it's all the generations within a company, they think about how young people behave, that you see a lot of opportunities, but also risk for your business model, for your employer brand of the future. So I'm basically trying to help companies to understand the future and doing trend research and where is it going and what do we need to adjust today that we are ready for the future.
Yeah. As you talk to a number of companies as you're doing that, are there things that like misconceptions, like common misconceptions that companies have about working with our younger generations?
Yes, I think a lot of companies, they think that young people, they don't talk to each other anymore. They're just on the phone. They sometimes think they don't want to work anymore. And they don't want to basically be active and proactive on certain initiatives, where I say that's of course sometimes true, and please always never forget that those new interests and a little bit this laziness among young people is nothing new. I mean, my parents were the same, my grandparents were the same. When you're young, you're very new in life, basically. But at the same time, I try to make clear to companies that the big difference about today's young people is the technologies we're living in, the new possibilities, the new business models we are using all the time, which of course differs the kind of mindset and like the normal behavior we are going through life, because we have those new opportunities. So on the one side, older generations, they do not really see the importance of technology and how it is really changing the mindset. But at the other side, or on the other hand, they have some misperceptions about that we are basically not humans anymore,
right.
Which is of course not true. You know, we are still humans, we still have emotions, but in some other situations and some other ways how we do that.
From Charlotte and Yannick, both of your perspective. So if we've been successful today, what are 3 things that we want listeners to be able to go and take away and take some actions on based on our conversation?
Well, the importance of millennials is growing, and millennials are now really the largest generation in the United States, currently comprising 34%. So that number is growing rapidly. By 2025, they say a full 75% of the U.S. workforce will be millennials.
Yeah.
So 3 major takeaways we would like to communicate is firstly the mindset, this openness of the millennials,
yeah.
how they function in terms of being flexible, in terms of how leadership should be approaching these millennials. And we would like to show you with some examples during this podcast what exactly we mean with this open mindset.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's the whole point over trust. It's for millennials. It's currently very important to feel the trust from the manager and to feel very much engaged within this organization. So having frequent interaction from the leadership, being able to get frequent feedback nowadays is a very important point at this stage. And Yannick, do you have anything to add?
Yes, maybe exactly on that. What a lot of leaders, basically the interactions within a company is changing from years ago. It was normal that you have yearly or annual feedback talks. You have like a large feedback on how the young people or your employers or employees are working. And for me, this instant feedback, this frequent feedbacks, and especially also interactions on a daily or weekly basis between the manager and younger people is very important to me, because I think that's exactly this trustworthiness. We can create this trust between or within an employer organization. So that's very important, because young people, and that's going back to the first point, this mindset is very instant and very, I would say, not very, but more short term than we have seen it in earlier generations.
Yeah.
That's very important. And the third part, I would say, is this new individual thinking. Everyone wants to fulfill basically their individual needs. They have a customized lifestyle they want to follow. And through that, also within a company, it's very important if you get young people on board. They want to be part of a larger narrative, I would say, and like fulfill their dream within the company, whatever it is, and also like create your own why of you being in the company. That's very important.
So if I may add to the third point, it's important for companies to make jobs and career paths as customized as possible to appeal to the millennials.
So when we think about all the generations and the differences within generations, one thing, I I always have to be cognizant of is that we're not overgeneralizing by generation to generation, because I think a lot of the things are mindset driven. So you can be engaging in somebody who is in generation X, for example, who may have a more progressive mindset than somebody who's in generation Z. And it's all about, your own kind of personal journey. But that being said, I'm sure that there are we wouldn't be talking about generations and the difference between generations if generations didn't exist, if differences didn't exist. So I just wonder if you could share, like, from your perspective, why is it important for us to actually understand what those differences are and how they are kind of delineated by a certain generation?
Well, I think looking at all of the different generations, we are going through cycles, and there's also social change happening. So in terms of going through, taking into account all of these different changes, understandings, developments, it's important to understand the overall word generations. And never before, I think we've had such a workforce in place with such great diversity in race, gender, and ethnicity. So we have pointed out these 4 major generations, and imagine now these 4 generations working side by side in the workplace, and especially in my company, for example, being such a big conglomerate and having such international, global, complex teams in place. Me working from Switzerland, reporting to the US, reporting to China, and all at the same time. So it's a very unique cycle we're going through, with unique experiences, different attributes to consider, and all working under the same purpose, with the same scope.
Collective goals.
Collective goals, exactly. So it's definitely an important factor to consider for organizations.
So as we start to think about millennials, I think that a lot of organizations that I talk to have difficulty in actually attracting a younger generation and then helping create the environment for them to be successful, which is, I think, as if not more important than the attraction in the first place. I wonder if you could share, I think, both from your research, but obviously your own personal experience, what are some of the things that an organization could do, or what tips would you have for procurement leaders who are listening in terms of how they can attract the millennial generation into their organization and into their groups?
Maybe I can start, and then Charlotte can add of her experiences. What I saw is that a lot of companies, first of all, they need to make sure or think about the difference between what they think about their company and what they really communicate, or how they are perceived by younger generations of their company. There's always a big difference because, of course, older generations, they have maybe a company which is very traditional. They were very successful in the beginning or in the earlier days. So maybe my parents would say, this company is very successful employer brand. Yeah, you have to work there. And for us, it's maybe too traditional. It's a kind of old-fashioned way of leadership, or how they work, or how their brands are. So I think this difference is the first thing, like self-awareness of a company is very important. Then, of course, the second thing is, when you set that, the communication right, and also, of course, your employer brand is at the right spot, and it's exactly that what young people want and need, because you need to make sure of that. So you maybe adapt the workplace and the work content and work mode. But if you have that, it's very important that you then, for attraction, that you, of course, are available and you have the attention of young people on those platforms there online and where their attention is. So a lot of companies say, probably now you come with social media, but that's just a part of the whole game. And I say, of course, it's just a part. But the thing is, it's a big, big part. So when you, and I mean, you see it when you observe young people. They're on Instagram, on Snapchat, on Facebook, sometimes, or whatever platform. Or YouTube. That's where the attention is. So you need to grab your attention on those platforms. That's super, super important. Then you can think about other things of how you can retain them. But of course, attracting, that's very important to have the communication right. So the content of the communication and, of course, the distribution on the right channels in the right way, how young people perceive it as cool and as very valuable, or let's say very easy to digest. You know what I mean? So forget the long job descriptions and go to the web page and then you see more details and blah blah blah. No, why don't you make a cool picture with an easy description which leads to a video? Why don't you just directly put up a video and then show your procurement department, show who's the head of, show who's the assistant, show where you can drink coffee. That you can put that together in a 1-minute video, which is, very emotional, very authentic, and very personal, in my opinion. So this whole showing of authenticity of the workplace or of the team, that's super important, in my opinion.
Yeah, that it's funny you just mentioned about the, for example, when you try to hire and shorter job descriptions. Probably 4 or 5 years ago when I was exploring going off and setting up my own business, that's pretty much the idea that I had. I need to unlock that at some point, where I just feel there's such a way of engaging with people that's different from just reading a job description. Like, people want to know who they're working with. It's a human to human kind of interaction. And it's something that you just don't get from a traditional hiring route. And that's restrictive, I think, for traditional, like older generations of engaging with somebody. But certainly now in this environment where you're just used to hearing, through pods, through videos, through whatever it is, so many different ways that you can bring your department to life so that you're better communicating who you are and what it is that you do. And I think really importantly, why it is that you're doing what you're doing, so you can connect with that.
So, and just to add, organizations, they can really seize this opportunity right now to create lasting and effective leadership for the future by bringing in this new energy, bringing in these new ideas, and that's in a way how you keep the talent nowadays. So this diversity in workplace, I think, will be a lot more easily achieved if younger leaders are given a voice in organizations. But also just my perception on attracting talent. I think attracting the best millennial professionals, it starts with understanding what motivates them. What's your why? What's your purpose? That's also what Simon Sinek stands for, understanding your why. And a competitive salary, a clear path for career progression, having a modern workplace, for example, that embraces also new developments in technology, being able to work with the technology that you're used to. All these are high priorities for millennials. Millennials, they are truly ambitious, and it's very important for them, for example, to have a social workplace, a workplace where you can also have your colleagues as your friends. Yep. They like to have the more experienced generation to look up to, because we as millennials, we like to ask for advice from their experience to get the most effective decision making out of it. But I think to retain millennial professionals, employers, they must show also an ongoing commitment to their careers. So providing a lot of feedback, not only waiting once a year for the feedback, but definitely going back with frequent feedback. That's what we kind of mentioned at the beginning. Right. And development is a priority for the millennials. So millennials employees are just as likely to consider a new role that offers a higher salary as they are to take a more fulfilling job nowadays. And many millennial professionals are forced to take work outside of their desired sector due to the recession. And as the economy has recovered, they are ready to pursue their original ambitions. If I can just add one interesting statistic, which I read, that 91% of millennials want rapid career progression, and that just that statistic made me think about developing future leaders.
Right.
Millennials are more open to international transfers as part of their career development than any generation that has been there before.
Mm-hmm.
And also myself, I will be also moving from Switzerland to the US shortly, working from our headquarters in the US. So that international transfer, it didn't take me even 24 hours to make up my mind whether I wanted to take that transfer or not.
The new experiences, working in new cultures. I feel, I completely hear you. I did the same. It's like I pursued every single opportunity I possibly could to work in different countries, to broaden kind of that experience and the diversity of experience.
So maybe I can follow up to that. We talked about those three things, and one of that was this individual thinking and those customized lifestyles. I think it's so important that young people get this flexibility, and they even really want that. That's one of their highest desires when they are at the university or they're doing their apprenticeship and thinking about where I'm going next or what's my first real employer. That's when they think about how much flexibility do I get in terms of workplace, as just Charlotte mentioned, and also what's the work content, because young people, they see a very high value in flexibility of the content of the work they do. So they see kind of their career as a how do you call it? Like these are just projects on projects and projects they're doing and accomplishing, and not as a whole thinking of like the next 10 years I'm doing that. They're seeing just one step ahead. And I think when we look at careers of this thinking of what I'm doing and how much do I want to change my employer, that people, they don't want basically to change their employer every 2 or 3 years, but if they have to, and that's what makes them happy, they have absolutely no problem in changing that, because they're doing those projects. So this is going to be very interesting how we can retain them.
Yeah, especially when, I think Charlotte mentioned 91% of millennials want rapid career progression, and yet the reality of organizational structure is that they're becoming flatter. So a lot less hierarchical. So there isn't a traditional career ladder. So what does progression really look like? Is progression diversity of project or opportunity? So you can try new things versus it being, hey, I'm a manager today and I want to be a senior manager tomorrow. Maybe to start,
the very important thing is to understand that those young people, they have a problem with this long-term thinking of, you can work here 2 or 3 years and then we will promote you to another spot. Mm-hmm. That's this big problem. That's exactly what Charlotte mentioned, this very quick career progression, which they desire because they have a much more short-term thinking, which is a big leadership problem and also requires leaders to rethink how they interact and lead millennials to always get this connection and interaction and trust of young people.
Yeah, which goes back to that regular feedback. So the continuing to engage on a very regular basis about where you want to go and what you're doing, and if that is fulfilling you, as opposed to, as you said before, just assuming let's do an annual career review and check all the boxes, because your outlook is what am I going to do in this job in the next 5 years, not what am I going to do in this job in the next 3 months.
Mm-hmm. And just to add, to attract millennial professionals, employers, they also need to ensure that they have strategies and policies in place. So what I talked about before, having this purpose, it motivates me so much that my company has that fantastic credo we work after. And every day we get reminded when going to work what this credo is all about. And having a purpose, it helps us a lot more to focus. And this is something which should truly be communicated from the senior leadership, also in other companies. And communicating, and not being afraid to communicate career progression, I think is also a major factor. Not being in a way feeling supported from the company, that they support you in fulfilling different assignments while you go on this career journey. That has really motivated me a lot, by having my leadership engaging with me what I would like to achieve, what my purpose is, and where I would like to head in the next couple of years and 3 years. But if I may add, Phil, there was also another interesting statistic I read, that 53% of millennials say that they are more likely to take a job with an employer who uses the same technology as they do. So that's also quite interesting. Millennials, they regard technology as being a key factor in conflict between different generations at work. And this can take the form of young employees being frustrated by outdated systems. Or older workers struggling to adapt to the new technologies. And we get that all the time, the role of technology. You know, as millennials, we get super enthusiastic working together, working with other colleagues together, embracing this up-to-date technology. And it's just because growing up, adapting to these technologies and being challenged. Who is the first one to have adapted it first? And that leads to your previous point about having customized workplaces. And I think having this whole technology awareness, not everybody is able to work with these technologies nowadays. So millennials who are going into a workplace now, they are looking for customized workplaces.
So one of the things I do struggle with the idea of the customized kind of workplace is, how do I, as a leader, actually put that into place? Because I can see a risk of there being seen to be a lot of favoritism or jealousy within the workplace if somebody is getting opportunities. And they're having that, their organization is building this kind of customized career path or opportunities for them about where they work or whatever it may be, and somebody else on that same team doesn't necessarily get those same opportunities. It seems like there could be a conflict there. And I just wonder if either of you have seen how organizations kind of are going about trying to manage for that conflict.
So what I always say to leaders is about the mindset of young people. This clarity is a very high demand of young people, and also high need within a communication program, or within a communication. It's very much needed within an offering or a deal. So I think what's very important is that this is communication about what is going to happen, what are the rules, or maybe who's going to be promoted, and especially why. Maybe sometimes it's not always fair, but it's very important that you kind of label that thing directly, like talk the elephant in the room, right. Because that gets so much talking behind the back. I mean, that's normal, and that's kind of the change management things you should apply there. Yeah. That's nothing new, but I think especially within young people, and like one bad story, one person leaves, what happens? They go to Glassdoor and they leave their review. Yeah. So you have that information within seconds again available. And I think it's so important that you set up this clarity and clear communication all the time, because young people, they are so easily distracted and they don't have time to read long papers and deals and emails and whatsoever. So although you communicated and you said, what are the rules? What is happening? Young people, they don't get the message or basically the memo, because they were they didn't want to read it through. So maybe that's only what I can share on that. I don't know, maybe you have other stories, Charlotte, from the team or whatsoever.
Well, I would just like to add that setting expectations from the beginning, it follows up with clarity, communicating the goals, what can be achieved. And I've always, with my management, right from the beginning, asked for open, direct communication. Then I know where I stand with them. I know how my performance is. And I don't like to wait until I get the next feedback session.
No surprises.
I don't like to wait for no surprises. And I don't like to wait for my next team meeting a week. If anything, I take the phone and I call up straight away to get instant feedback. And that follows up to the whole saying that millennials, they seek instant gratification.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's all instant.
Yeah.
Before, we used to send out letters. Then we went through that whole fax stage. And then the internet got introduced and emails. And now it's email flood every day at the business. So I like to, instead of just writing these emails back and forth, I'm more a person to just pick up the phone and communicate.
That's interesting, given the fact that we usually rely on technology as a communication device, and it's even going now to, pinging people. Like even 5 years ago, using IMs and other messengers like that was relatively. It wasn't used in most organizations. Now, I mean, that's my primary method of communication with all the people that I work with. Is we don't even email. Email is for kind of longer form, wanting to get a point across.
Right.
But if we want to communicate with each other, it's just a one-line message on an instant messenger.
Isn't that just so crazy how it's developed? And now it's even more quicker. Now we just ping each other. Yeah. And it's the same in my workplace. I quickly ping my manager, who is in a different continent, to get instant decision-making.
Yeah. And with it goes any semblance of having good grammar or spelling, because suddenly grammar and spelling doesn't matter, because all we're doing is putting 5 or 6 words together into a ping to communicate a message.
Yes.
I feel like we're only just scratching the surface here, but I do know that it's time to wrap up. My final question, I know that as we went through the conversation, we covered the elements of the 3 items that we wanted to discuss, which was the flexibility, the customized design of kind of careers, and the importance of feedback. If listeners want to know more or just continue the conversation, what would be a good place for them to actually find both of you?
So me, you can find me, of course, on social media. It's all within NeoViso with a V.
Okay.
Or, of course, on my webpage, neoviso.ch.
Yep.
So that's the Swiss ending. You also find my number or my email. So because a lot of that stuff is in German, you can just shoot me an email and let's talk about future generations.
The power of the Google Translate button as well. As I found when I was doing some research. Again, it goes back to that laziness, doesn't it? No longer learning another language, 100%. But just hitting Google Translate.
100%.
And Charlotte, where can listeners find you?
So listeners can find me on my website, charlottedebrabandt.com, also on Google, and I'll be definitely very interested in engaging in a few more discussions how supply chain and procurement is going to be affected in the future.
For folks who would like to reach out and follow up on the conversation that we had today, I'm going to share both of your contact details and websites in our show notes. And those are going to be at artofprocurement.com/generation-gap. That's artofprocurement.com/generation-gap. Charlotte, Yannick, I just want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Phil, for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very interesting.
Hi there, I want to thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. You can check out all of our back catalogue at artofprocurement.com/podcast, where you can also subscribe to our newsletter to make sure that you never miss an episode. And if you found value in today's show, I'd love if you would tell a peer, or perhaps go and rate and review by going to artofprocurement.com/review. Word of mouth really is the best way to help the podcast grow, and if you're able to do either one of those things, I would truly appreciate it.